Estamos en vivo. Vamos a llamar a Meta en un momento. Esta es una introducción. Okay, we're live now. I'm going to interview Meta, the latest SSP insider who worked on the Dark Fleet. And I want to call him right now on Skype. Lo voy a llamar ahora mismo por Skype. La entrevista será traducida en vivo. Vamos a intentar este formato para alcanzar más personas. This interview will be translated live so we can reach more people. And I'm gonna call him right now. Okay, wait a minute. We're contacting Meta. Estamos contactando a Meta. Y muy pronto... Oh, esperen un segundo. Estoy viendo que quizá no podemos traducirla en vivo. Meta is telling me this is going to be a very complicated interview. We're going to talk about lots of stuff, so we might not be able to translate it on the fly, actually. But we'll try. Let's see. Parece que la entrevista va a ser muy complicada, va a tener temas muy interesantes. No sé si podamos traducirla inmediatamente, pero bueno. Ahí vamos. Voy a llamar a Meta. Ya está.
Hello.
Hey, good night, Meta. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Trying to get everything situated. There we go.
Can you hear me? It's all okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then we are live now, and we agreed to this third interview. That's going to be a very interesting one, I think, because, well, I sent you a file with some topics that we wanted to talk about. And, well, we wanted to get everything on the table, and I actually asked you for this this third interview and a fourth interview, so it's 2 interviews this week, because I thought that it would be very important to have all the information like right on the table as fast as possible. What do you think about that?
Hey. You still there?
Yeah. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. So we have a lot to go over today. We were talking more earlier about what exactly we wanted this interview to be about, and I, after contemplation, I read it yesterday, and working with a few other of my friends in the SSP, I came to the conclusion that I really had to talk about all of the much darker aspects of the Dark Fleet in the SSP, and you've got to understand that when I went through my awakening, and I spent that time with my star family and the Ascended Masters and the Angelic Realms and all of that, a lot of the pain and emotion from the darker side of those periods was kind of removed. And so it was like kind of like a gray slate of, I know these things happened, but I didn't feel the pain or emotion from it in
Oh, yes?
the last day or so. In a more painful way. It's easy for me to talk about all of
Wait, I think I'm losing your audio, actually. We didn't get that last part about all the like you were able to talk about it, but you couldn't process all these emotions. Is that what I'm getting?
Oh, what I had said was that my healing process, I had a lot of the negative emotions removed from the experiences, and that it was kind of looking back at like a gray kind of, 1950s, black and white TV show.
Ah, okay.
Are you still getting me?
Yes, I heard that part. Yes.
Okay, and in that respect, I didn't. It didn't fully register. I've been working with some people who have been through similar things, and in me putting it all together for them, I realized that emotionally it's going to be a lot more painful than I realized.
Mm.
Are you getting that also?
Yes. Hello. Now I'm starting to lose you again. Wait a second. No sé si puedes apagar el Wi-Fi de tu celular. No sé por qué no está. No sé por qué no está interfiriendo la música. Okay. Okay. We didn't get that at all, actually. So, yeah, exactly. Okay. ¿Algo pasó? ¿Algo pasó? No sé qué onda. Yo me la meto otra vez. A ver, ahí vamos. Hello?
Are we back?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Man, they really don't want me to talk about this, do they?
Yes. Okay. Let's repeat for those of you who didn't hear it. Okay. So Meta was talking about all these memories that are coming back and all these experiences that are coming back, and how difficult it would be to process all of this, right?
Right. They're very dark things, and we've had a lot of. I've had these memories the whole time. It's just that you're scared to talk about it. You have this ingrained fear to talk about it, and even though you've been through the healing process with the angelic realms, the ascended masters, and the star families, and things like that, they've kind of been grayed out in that it's not as a potent an emotion. But when you really get to working on putting it all together, I went through the synopsis you gave me yesterday, and putting it all together and everything, some of the emotional strain of it really started to affect me again, and I begun to realize that I'm going to have to share this with everyone so they know what it was like and how bad it actually was. But I just want everyone to kind of brace themselves for this, because it's not a pretty situation. So basically, there was an indoctrination inside of the Dark Fleet SSP group that I was in, sort of a spiritual indoctrination that there was no God, there was no higher power other than the self, other than you, each person, and that everything was predatory, everything. That everything fed on everything else, and that this was the system, and that the only way to get anywhere being the bottom rung and just being a host to predatory parasites and everything else was to raise your own level and absorb more energy vampirically than the guy next to you. And the pecking order was set up that way. Everyone was indoctrinated that way. I did not have to believe that personally. And it was because, well, for multiple reasons. One was because it was obvious that I did not have to use any type of vampirism to use my abilities. I wasn't, I was connected to some type of higher power, and I knew this, from the get-go. But I was punished severely with these chips they had in the suits or in my body. I can't tell you. That if I contradicted what they said, what others said about those subjects, this is severe pain that caused immense headaches and bring you to your knees, shaking, convulsing, throwing up, and your thoughts were monitored a lot of the time. I got very lucky after my second nodal point that I was able to start bypassing some of that. But up until just things you could, every thought was monitored. Everything you did, said, movement, everything was monitored. A lot of the technicians and many of the lower soldiers and people who were in side fields like me were indoctrinated with a black goo. They had to drink this black goo that was like a dark AI that controlled them, and it kind of sucked the emotional empathic abilities out of them. They could not feel other people's pain. It made them very smart, very focused, but they no longer cared about harming other people. And it was like watching the light get consumed out of them. And it was very scary to see it happen. They were never the same person. The things that you had once known and seen in them, you could not know or see anymore. It was all shrouded. And you felt like they could kill you as quick as look at you. They'd look right through you like that. And for someone who was not given a black goo, it made you feel like you were surrounded by demons, by very evil people. As soon as they were given that stuff, it was like they were a different person. And this was something that you just had to deal with. There's other things like that where, like, for example, Handler, as far as I know, still had empathic abilities. Those on the higher ranks of the soldiers. Are you there?
Yes. Those in the higher levels still had empathic abilities.
Right.
Okay.
Now, their empathic abilities were trying that they did not give a single care to someone that was not a part of their group. They had no empathic abilities for captives, for anyone below them.
Hello?
But had those abilities. Whether or not they were feigned or not, some of the things they did was more like a con. But that was a big part of their system, in that they were kind of excellent con men. When they would capture people from other ships, they would use those derelict ships to capture other ships, and they would keep a skeleton crew, and they would all the skeleton crew would be given black goo. They'd be implanted, and they'd have to follow out the orders of the Dark Fleet, and they would do things like put out a distress call. The Dark Fleet would wait in cloaked for other ships to show up, and then they would raid those ships. the rest of them were sent to outposts to be used from human trafficking, trade, slave trade, and just basic, extremely brutal and horrible research. Anybody who dissented in any way was punished and tortured. Everything that they did to help anyone was brought to light. If they would be tortured to the point of death and then reanimated in a tank of this green-like goo, and then they would be tortured and to the point of death over and over again until it was all until they got it all. And they had special psychics that were part that had drank in the black goo that monitored all this, so they knew when they got all of the information. If they felt like they could be repurposed, and they were repurposed, they were blank slated, wiped and repurposed. If they did not feel they could be repurposed, they were just spaced. They were just shot out an airlock. This happened to multiple people on the workshop and things like that. That's part of the reason why I froze the whole ship, was that the only two scientists that I felt I could count on were missing the day they brought me in. And that was after I had already begun the invasion of other ships and had my second nodal point. And that leads up to where I froze the workshop, the observation room, and then the ship. And I was very angry, and I knew, because of that nodal point, what powers I had to come and what powers I was already manifesting. And I wasn't going to allow it to go the way that I was told by some of the earlier versions of me from the from the second nodal. You have to understand, I'm going to go into what the nodal was like for a moment, and then I'm going to tell you about my negotiation with the general and the comfy spot I got after that. The second nodal started with me crying and breaking down in front of a long laboratory mirror, and a version of me coming in from the future and watching from outside the room, afraid to enter because of... You still there?
See? Yep. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Afraid to enter because of the things they had told me about interacting with myself through time and how I could destroy things. I walked in. The second me, the first me who was watching outside the room was standing there shaking his head. The second me, who had warped in from a later time, walked in and started talking to me. Then it was like a flood of me's walking in towards the me standing in front of the mirror. The first one said everything he needed to say, gave me a hug. The second one said everything he needed to say, and gave me a hug. By the fourth one, all they had to do was touch me on the forehead, and all of the information they had to give me was just immediately downloaded, transferred into me. From that point forward, it was like walking through a tunnel. All the me's looked like a caterpillar. Each one was touching me on the forehead, and there would be a flash, and then the next one would do it, and it turned into 1,000 me's transferring information into me and walking through a caterpillar myself to the door to the first me that was watching. That's how I received all of the information in my second nodal. 3 seconds altogether. By the end of it, I had probably progressed 15 years worth of knowledge in a very short period of time. But in a body that hadn't learned how to use those things I was just told and taught how to do. And immediately after I'd stepped out of the laboratory, the information I had used on how to circumvent some of their tracking mechanisms on reading my mind and tracking me, and I used rudimentary versions of what they had shown me to do that made it partially effective. The day did not finish before I was taken to the workroom. By that point in time, that's when I froze the ship. And so I had frozen the ship. It wasn't that the ship was frozen in time. Like I said, it was like everyone inside of themselves was frozen. Like their mechanism for measuring time had stopped. And so they had all stopped. Time still moved the same. Objects still fell to the ground. All of the generators still hummed. Everything worked as normal. The ship wasn't stopped in time. Just everyone inside of themselves was stopped. I went to the main bridge control room, and I unfroze the general. At this time, I went into this. He screamed at me, "What have you done?"
Oh my God. No. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. This is important. No. Wait, this is no. We need this conversation, actually. I can't lose you right now. We need this conversation on record. Let me see if I can do something to improve the connection, because this is like critical. The talk with the general. Ok, le estoy diciendo a Meta que lo estoy perdiendo. Es que está hablando ahorita sobre el general, sobre la vez que congeló toda la nave. Pero lo estoy perdiendo. A ver, ahí va otra vez. Ok. Bueno, ahorita Meta me estaba diciendo que sobre el segundo punto nodal, lo que llamamos el punto nodal, que fue cuando empezó a enseñarse a sí mismo trucos, y sus yos del futuro le enseñaban todas las habilidades que necesitaba para circunventar la vigilancia de la flota oscura. Y justo cuando empezamos a hablar del general y de la conversación que tuvo con el general, es que se perdió la llamada. Y lo que necesitamos es oír nada más la conversación con el general. Porque esto nos va a llevar a la siguiente parte de la historia. A ver, otra vez, espérenme. Lo estamos perdiendo. Ahorita la encontramos. No se vayan, ahorita la encontramos. Ok, voy a tratar otra vez. Ahí viene. Hello?
Hello.
Okay, so we're back now.
Okay, so where did we leave off?
We were talking about the general. I mean, so let's go back to the beginning of the conversation where he yelled to, "What have you done?" And then take it away.
Right. Okay, he had said, "What have you done? You're going to destroy everything." And I told him, and I said, and I was very unhappy at that time about living all these lies that everyone else lived by, and being punished for trying to dispel the lies and tell them that that wasn't the way it was. And how I was willing to keep this ship frozen forever if it didn't change. And he told me that was never going to change. This ship could stay frozen for eternity and it would never change. And so instead I started to argue and bargain for my own freedom, more freedom for myself, less control for myself, less. I said I cannot live inside this suit the way it treats me. The suit is destroying me, and I won't survive it unless I'm allowed to have a suit that is less invasive, that does not control me so severely. And I threatened to portal out portions of his body. I threatened to portal out portions of this ship. I threatened to do all sorts of things. And other ships arrived. And I expanded this bubble that I'd been using to freeze everyone, and any other ship that got close would start to freeze also. And one ship was half frozen and was able to communicate with the general through some type of chip he had. And they decided that they just could not go any further, that any type of attempt to stop my insurrection would do nothing but cause other ships to also be destroyed. And so we made a deal to get me back on board, if you will, where I was given a choice of many different suits. They relinquished certain controls over me that hindered my abilities, allowed me to develop the abilities I wanted. Normally, in that situation, I was only supposed to be someone who could portal in or out in time travel. I was not supposed to have abilities that allowed me to feel emotions and read people's minds. I was not supposed to be able to do that, but I was granted those abilities also. I wasn't to be able to do things like what I did with the stopping of people's internal clocks. They're just freezing them like that. But I was given those abilities. I was given other abilities in addition to that, the suits allowed me to use my other abilities. It's really hard for me because I felt like I bargained away everyone else's freedom by accepting those gifts. I had a position there where I could try and save everyone, and instead I just accepted a cushy position.
So that was what was causing you conflict.
Yes, and it was a very tough situation in that I still every day had to watch people live their lives underneath the control of that black AI, or be tortured or controlled. It sometimes even it made my fault. Like I shouldn't have said that to them. Now they have to be tortured. Things like that. Or if I had just left a minute earlier instead of staying, these people wouldn't be punished for me hearing what they had said, or it became more that the punishment was someone else being punished, more than me being punished. And they, in fact, used my empathy against me in that respect as a form of control. And that if I didn't want to see others harmed, I would do exactly what I was told when I was told.
Okay, so let's.
How you did it? You just do exactly what you were told when you were told, because you didn't want anyone to be harmed. But it was a lie too, because they were harmed either way, and you felt very trapped, and there was nothing you could do about it. I found solace in the fact that I did not have to adhere to a lot of their belief systems, and I still had my handler, and I still had much more freedom than a normal person, and I had the ability to escape when I wanted to, as long as I returned with my within the time dilation.
Well, so before we move forward, I wanted to stop a little bit in this scene because it's very important. For example, I think it would be important if we could identify the captain of your ship.
Yes. He was a human, as best I could tell. He was one of the only ones to not have blonde hair. He had brown hair. He had a little bit of a rounded face. He always looked around 32. Clean cut, always very clean cut, no facial hair. All the upper brass had their own suits, like my suit, the body suits, that amplified their abilities. And they wore a black military fatigue over the top of that, a black pants, black shoes, and a black collared shirt, military shirt, pockets on each side of it. They carried one symbol each for their insignia of what they were. They carried the German Nazi SS, and some had them in silver, and some had them in gold. I don't know if it was silver or platinum, but the silver-colored ones were higher than the gold ones.
Mm-hmm. And did he have some kind of powers?
He definitely had a power to communicate at extremely long distances, whether that was a technological implant or an ability, I don't know. I could always tell the ones that had black goo, and he did. But many of his subordinates that were blonde and blue-eyed did not. There was this thing I could do where I could look into their eyes, in the center of the dark part of their eyes, and I could tell if they had the black AI in them. And he did, but many of his subordinates that went on the raid missions in the military faction of it did not. Almost everyone who was a pilot did.
Okay, so he was consumed by the AI.
Correct. He was under control of the AI.
Okay, and maybe did he have some personality that you could describe?
Yes, he was a con man. He was a wheeling and dealing con man. He was a destructive person in that respect, in that he was very good at generating consent for whatever evil he wanted to accomplish. He could make anyone agree to anything. And it was always a carrot and stick type of situation. And the carrot always turned out to be less than you thought it was going to be. And the stick was always larger than you realized.
Okay, good description. Now, he was the top of the chain of command in your ship, right? He was the very top.
Yes.
Okay. So, and there were other levels inferior to him, no? Could you describe the chain of command, maybe a little bit, of your ship?
Yes. There were 3 other people below him. One handled the pilots. One handled the soldiers. And this is the one that handled us and the scientists. And it was like he handled everyone else, from the slaves and captors to the scientists to us. And he was extremely evil. And he had no hair anywhere on his body, and he was humanoid, but his eyes were completely black. He had no colored to to his eyes, that just the whites on the edge and the rest of it was black. I have to assume he had much more of the black AI in him than normal. And ruthless. They'll slit your throat as soon as look at you. And the people underneath him were allowed to do a lot of things for discipline. He had a group of people that he used to control everyone that wasn't a soldier or a pilot. But none of them were allowed to kill anyone. He was the only one allowed to kill people.
Okay, so, and below him, so below the captain, there were 3 sub-captains maybe? Or do you know the name of the rank?
I do not. I can't tell you.
And below the guy with no hair, which was, I assume, the one you had more interaction with, did he have, how many subordinates did he have?
Gosh, I would have to say at least anywhere from 20, it varied, because some of them would leave on other missions on other ships and come back. And sometimes they would come back with people, sometimes they would take people with them. But it was between 24 and 13 in that range. And many of them were very psychic. And my handler reported directly to him.
Oh.
And only directly to him. None of his subordinates ever had anything that they could say to her. In fact, she had domination over me and protected me from them many times. But she had to report directly to him.
So you were actually very close to the actual general in the chain of command, like only 3 levels below, maybe.
Well, I never got to make commands to anyone.
Oh.
I was just allowed, I was just shielded or buffered from most of their control systems. I was never allowed to make a single command to anyone ever. Sometimes I would try when we were in the middle of a raid mission, and it might work, and it might not. But those were the only times I was ever brave enough, or it had the necessity that I had to tell someone else to do something.
So even though you were close to, well, yes, to these high rank generals, you did not have any authority at all.
None. After I relinquished the power back to the ship and everyone was unfrozen, I received new rules. My rules were a lot less, were diminished. The things that I was allowed to do and I wasn't allowed to do. I was not held to all sorts of standards they tried to hold me to before. The only thing that remained was I wasn't allowed to contradict the belief systems of the other passengers of the ship, regardless of who they were. As long as I didn't do that, they wouldn't do anything to harm me.
Okay, so now just to get a clear picture of the ship and everything inside the Dark Fleet, now that we're at it, could you describe the general atmosphere that you felt inside the ship and, well, all the details from what you eat while you were up there, what the crew eat, all this stuff?
I was fed the same thing every day. It was kind of like a gelatinous, clear, mildly brown-colored goo that had almost no flavor. There wasn't. We had these pills that we took that suppressed your appetite and were very full of vitamins. And some days you would go for. Some days you would take them and you would go for days without needing to eat. And so there wasn't a lot of time involved with eating, and when there was, it was just a simple substance that was supposed to have all the nutritional vitamins for you.
But was there a cafeteria where you could go and eat there?
There was a small cafeteria, and it was used more in the beginning than it was used later. The soldiers used it every day, 3 times a day. We, on the other hand, were not allowed to associate with them, and a lot of times if we received a ration, we would have to take it back to our quarters to eat. We weren't allowed to eat with them. I can only remember 3 times I was allowed to eat in the actual cafeteria with other people around, and my handler was there. And I was separated from the other people.
Okay. Now, was there any kind of was there any kind of religion that was practiced openly inside the ship?
That vampiric religion that they held that was it's very similar to the ideas of the Black Sun, the Order of the Black Sun. The same ideas.
So there was a ritual. There was a ritual inside the ship.
The ritual, there's just surrounding just the black goo thing. They had a special room for that. It was a ritual that they did. I wasn't exposed to the actual ritual, but I saw what people looked like when they came out. And I did see the black goo on 1 or 2 occasions. Not because I was supposed to, but because I poured it in when no one knew to see the room.
Okay. Did they carry some sort of symbol which they would use to identify themselves or their ship? Like, well, for example, the symbol of the Black Sun was there on the ship?
Some of the military soldiers had Black Sun tattoos.
Oh.
But I got the feeling that they had mixed belief systems. Some of them, they did not all believe the same thing, and they would brazenly make fun of each other sometimes for that. But I wasn't supposed to know all that, and they got punished for me knowing.
Oh. So it was still an occult thing. It wasn't out in the open.
Yes, and I was not supposed to know any of it. I think partially it was because of the later missions where I was more of a Trojan horse, and they didn't want it to taint me for those missions. Also, if I was captured, I wouldn't know what they were, who they were allied with in different factions and things like that. I think maybe they probably wanted to keep me in the dark on those issues as much as possible. I found ways to gather small amounts of information from just the sheer power of curiosity. Not all of those worked out because I was punished by other people being punished. I did get away with seeing the room where the black goo was kept, and without their knowledge. But it was because I had, at that point in time, I had learned how to go light body, but at a level where it couldn't be seen, where I looked invisible.
Could you describe for us the room where the black goo was kept?
Yes, it was a black room. Everything was black inside of it. There were pillars. There was the different times I came in, there were different number of pillars. Sometimes there were 3. Sometimes there were 6. Sometimes there were 9. Sometimes there were 13. And there was a big bowl in the center of the room that looked like it was made of brass, and it was almost the shape of an egg, except if you had cut off the top quarter of the egg, and you had to look down inside to see it. And it wasn't easy to see. There was no light shining inside of it. But apparently they would pour it into some type of container, and they would have to drink it. And I'd use this system to where I could make myself into a light body. And what I'd do was when I would pour it out after a mission, and I would go on an excursion back to Earth or something. The idea that would reach a curiosity level that I would pour it back in before I'd even left for the mission. Right when we were leaving to the mission, I figured it during the busiest time like that, right when that they wouldn't notice as much, and I made myself into this tiny light version of myself, and a high vibration that wasn't visible, and I poured it in through a tiny port. It was no big size of a needle to investigate the room. And I went back 3 separate times. I was never able to go back and see what the ritual was like. I was only able to see what the room appeared like before or after. Sometimes I would use a reference point of when they did it, but it always seemed like I'd miss when it happened. And I don't know why that is, but I always miss the ritual. And I'd always catch it right before or after, and then feel like I couldn't be there for specific reasons whenever it was going to happen. So I would pour it out.
Yeah, it sounds almost as if the darkness was keeping you from entering the ritual.
Yes, it felt like, like magnets of the same poles, how they push each other away like that. It felt like that.
Okay.
It felt like there was some type of bubble around that ritual that prevented, like a time bubble that prevented me from entering it. Like water falling off, beads falling off, like a wax surface or something. I couldn't adhere to that ritual. I couldn't see it. I would be forced, like, literally if I tried to stay, I'd just kind of be forced out of the room in that tiny version of my light body.
Now, do you think they've used this black goo on people on Earth?
Yes.
Oh,
especially those 3 that I met that they made the deals with for the saving of the elite children. They all 3 had the same signature of energy that the people on the ship who had been given it had. And some of them, and 2 of the 3 of them displayed their black sun tattoos much more predominantly. The one in South America had it on his neck, halfway coming out of his collar. And the one in Europe had it on his left shoulder. And he made sure to wear a shirt that was a tank top.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you remember then these people, their faces?
Well, I mean, they're, to a degree. I mean, the one from South America was definitely of South American descent. He was a normal build, kind of an oval face, but with an angular chin, angular jawline and chin, and very, very piercing, very dark eyes. You could almost feel the pulse of those eyes in your heart. The European one was more like, he had a mustache, brownish colored, and short hair, and he wore sunglasses for half of the time we talked, and then he took them off for effect when he wanted to say something, and you got the same, but that wasn't as strong as the guy from South America. Um, the first one in the Americas and the Northeast Americans area, he seemed like the oldest of the three, and there's just something different about him. There was more to him than just the black goo.
So, like something more negative, another negative element in the mix?
More like, yes, but tricky and very old. Very, very, very old. Older than the other two. Probably the oldest out of anyone I had met, as far as not that you could see it on their face, not that they looked like an older person, but the age of the thing that it was, whatever it was extremely old.
Okay. Okay, so, well, it's important because by the end of the season, really, we're going to connect the dots, which is this interview's topic, and we're going to see if we can connect them to certain factions that are still active, that may be still active here on the surface of the planet, and we're going to denounce them and just disclose everything. And I mean, that's how we're going to make them go away. Well, at least that's the plan.
I can definitely tell you that they're not fully gone from the surface of the earth, these groups. And that ties into the work I've been doing in Venezuela lately. That is such a mess down there. I'm scared to speak the wrong thing about Venezuela, and there's so much going on there. I cannot fully grasp it. We spoke in private before about the positive and negative groups of the reptilians. One that was more established on Earth a very long time ago, that is reaching a point of being able to breed again, and the other that is much more aligned with the draconian groups and is stealing nests, is raiding nests, and causing great turmoil. And the reflection of that in the political and social sphere of Venezuela is just a huge mess. Neither one of those two reptilian groups give a single care for human beings. And the draconian group that is also allied, I believe, with the same factions that I was allied with, is causing extreme turmoil. And the other group, the more positive faction, is trying to break away from that into a greater world organization and greater than the world, a galactic organization. And the turmoil is apparent. And neither group is doing anything to stop what's happening to the human populace in the social or the political realms. I cannot tell you if the president now is fully in the light. All I can tell you is that he is making a push towards the countries I know that are in the light. I have to believe that the way our federal government is acting and the way the compromised news organizations are acting, that they are supporting the negative faction that has been going around and crushing windows and shooting people in the street there. I cannot predict what will happen in the future, but I can tell you that I would be very careful about trusting opposition that is supported by the U.S. government. And I think that's as accurate as I can get with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the negative factions are allied with the guys that are trying to push the U.S. agenda.
Correct. A big surprise, right? But, I mean, there's, as far as the antiquities go there, the tabletop mountains are ancient they predate Atlantean times. There is a avian influence in them that is apparent, and those are where the larger tabletop is where the negative reptilian faction resides, and the smaller one is where the positive faction resides. I believe the smaller one is kind of southeast. No, southeast of the larger tabletop. But their influence spreads throughout the area, and there's just it has to. I don't even know what to say about it other than it's best to stay out of the way.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much, because a lot of readers have been asking us about the situation in Venezuela and Latin America in general. So thanks for your insights.
It was very hard work. It was very dangerous. There were a lot of times where I just had to leave before I got caught. And there were a lot of times where you were definitely guided to think the wrong thing. And you had to spend a lot of time reevaluating what you had just saw and what was the actual intent of that. And, so I can't be fully clear on anything that's going on there, but I think I said it. Everything I spoke has been true.
Okay. Now, I'm having a lot of curiosity about the period in time where they were trying to keep you happy, where the Dark Fleet was trying to keep you happy. Like, what would they do?
Oh, there was, my handler started introducing a lot of sexual kundalini magic. Unbeknownst to me, it was being used to create portals, to charge me, or to charge me in a way that it was the energy was being siphoned off to create portals for whatever purposes they had. There was a lot of that was during the whole time to where they whether or not I was actually circumventing their tracking or not, I was getting my vacations. There was a lot of opportunities for me to the couple of times I got to go to the cafeteria were during that time. Just any little bit of shore leave to certain ports, experiencing a port that was literally set up to be like a shore leave port, party port.
Oh, okay.
Things like that. I mean, those party ports, from my perspective, were still emotionally scarring. But everyone else seemed to love it.
What?
And
so you didn't like the party port?
No, because it was obviously set up to make those people there in complete service to us, and it just showed that it was still a control system. And I feigned enjoying it a lot, but it was more of another telltale sign on how evil they were from everything I could glean and sense and feel from those on the inside. On the outside, it was a beautiful portrayal of a perfectly clean and excellent system meant for relaxation and any type of recreation you can imagine. But there was a much darker side behind it. The people there were very happy to be there because they had been tortured everywhere else. And things like that. And so it was a thin facade from my perspective.
So then there wasn't much of an improvement compared to the time before the second, well, at least Well, there was change because you had new abilities, but the way they were trying to keep you happy wasn't as well. It doesn't seem much different.
Mm. They thought it was different. And the frequency of things, actually, the frequency of times I had where I was given opportunities to enjoy myself increased. I was able to port back to Earth and experience everything I wanted to experience. I've always operated under the idea that they would never let me do that, and I still don't think they would. So I think I got away with that without their knowledge, although I can never be sure. They might have let me do it. So there was a great increase of things that placated me and kept me from wanting to destroy the ship or freeze everyone or plummet us into a portal that they'd never be able to find their way back out of. Just anything that I would possibly do to ruin that ship's situation. They always found a way to give me enough of what I wanted to keep me from doing it.
Well, but ultimately it also helped you connect with the light beings and actually become a double agent for the light, right?
Yes, it did. And there is there's a very interesting part about the third nodal point, and I haven't disclosed this before, where it was more than just my contact with them that made them want me to go back. And towards the end, I went multi-dimensional in that when I went back, when they captured me and sent me back, there were versions of me that stayed around for quite a while after that. Some of them in service of those people, and others that were fully working with the light. I can't get into the moment that occurred, the actual moment of the third nodal, but I did something in their eyes in that third nodal point that was considered unforgivable. The personal physical body that I was in at that time was brought back, blank slated, age digressed, and everything. And there were multi-dimensional versions of me that stayed behind, some of them operating for the light, some of them operating for the dark fleet. So I have 2 to 3 years of experience after my third nodal point that is very complicated and hard for me to understand. And I don't think I could even put it all into words yet for the public because of how complicated it is, my interactions with my multidimensional selves in that time. And I still can't disclose the third nodal point because of the sensitive information that I refused to release to them, which is why I was sent back.
Okay, so it's also a matter of safety.
Well, it's more than a matter of safety. It's like an insurance policy. And also a protection upon things that could get into the wrong hands. So there's multiple reasons why.
Okay, so wow. Very much looking forward to the day where you can disclose it. Well, I mean, eventually everything's going to be disclosed, right? Everything's going to be out there in the open.
The first nodal point I'll be able to disclose in the next couple of months. Once the light network is fully up and running, I can disclose the first nodal point. And that one is an important one because it will transcend from the beginning of my experience all the way through past the end to my return and my life here, all the way up through my awakening. It's a very deep and expansive nodal point, and it prevented them from using me over and over again. But I cannot get into the specifics until the light network is finished.
Okay, no problem. I also wanted to prepare our readers a little bit and our listeners to this whole experience that we were going to be disclosing. And I think one of the very important points to discuss is the nature of time. Because it's going to be, I think, one of the hardest aspects to digest, maybe. The time traveling and all these things related to the timelines and how they've changed. So maybe could you talk to, just explain a little bit about the nature of time.
Okay, the nature of time is, the easiest way to explain it is like, time only moves forward and backwards. On planet, here on Earth, we look at time as a linear structure where you've got the past, the present, and the future. Where the past is old and stale, the present is a beautiful infinite moment, and the future is still kind of foggy and undefined. That is the simple representation of a three-dimensional understanding of time. In a four-dimensional understanding of time, the way I understand it is not only past, present, and future being more like all is one, but also, if you could imagine, instead of it spreading out to the right and the left in a multi-dimensional stance. Not only is there a future, a present, and a past, but there is an infinite number of future, presents, and pasts dimensionally on the right side, let's say, going to infinity of more positive versions. And then there is an infinite number of dimensions, let's say, on the left side, of, past, presents, and futures going to a more negative direction. And that's more of a four-dimensional view of time, and that there are infinite number of directions that are more positive in the spectrum and more negative in the spectrum, continuing along past, present, and future the same way ours is. In addition to that, at the very far end of each one of those streams of the spectrum, there are blank light dimensions and blank dark dimensions that are yet undefined, that have not yet become full of substance, but are of either closer to the dark end on the dark side, just plain blackness, and the light end on the light side, just pure light. And that's the basic understanding of how I used time throughout most of my time in that experience. Towards the end, it got much more complicated when multidimensional me started getting involved in my timeline. We're in a very unique time right now in that it seems to me that all of the multi-dimensions are being kind of woven together in a way that they're all becoming one. I was very lucky in that respect in that I was an organic time traveler, and so most of my work that was being done was all within the main timeline I existed in. But we're seeing now that a lot of the multi-dimensional side of the experiences are kind of being woven into our experience also. And I think this is one way that the light forces have prevented the negative forces from using other dimensions against the battle.
Okay, so we're heading to the most positive timeline now.
Yes, it's more like the central timeline that is kind of incorporating all the other timelines in a way that it will all become one.
Oh, okay, so this is the timeline where where darkness disappears. We're in this timeline.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very good. Nice. Now, talking about the victory of the light, then we were talking about also the light network and some things that you wanted to share about the light grid.
Yes, the light grid still needs a lot of help. I would definitely ask people to focus on South America and focus on Europe for the light grid. We need to connect the light grid through Europe all the way across China, and we need to work on South America. And I've been doing a lot of work, and it is ups and downs. There's the battles are fierce, and you could spend hours progressing a light grid and watch it be destroyed right behind you by the way the battles are going right now, and we need more people to help.
Okay, what do we need to do? Just tell us, and we'll spread the message.
I would recommend using Cobra's directed meditations, and instead of focusing it just where you're at, pick the areas more that I spoke of. A lot of times we have a tendency just to think locally and go, okay, well, let's do it in the area I'm in. But you have to understand the energies we're sending can be propagated anywhere. That time and distance are of no consequence when you're working with those energies, and that focusing on areas that are hotbeds will definitely improve our chances of reaching the goal of completing it by March. And there are certain areas, like in South America and in Europe, that need it really bad right now.
Do you think it would be a good idea burying Sintamani stones?
I agree with Cobra on this one. Do as you feel directed. Bury them in the important portal areas of the earth where you feel directed. But also, if you feel directed to keep one during meditations, please do. That can be of an immense benefit also. I recommend keeping at least one with you, to be honest with you, and keeping yourself in a position of unconditional love and service to light, while just holding it in meditation.
Okay, cool. That was actually one of our readers' questions, if it was good to either to bury or to have one with you. And yes, I mean, having one with you, I think it's also very beneficial.
Yeah, I'm going to say my answer to that one is both. I mean...
Oh, okay. So you said the light grid, well, we have the potential to finish it by March.
Correct.
But we have to work together. we need to keep pushing.
Correct. We need to keep pushing. We really have to focus on certain areas that are more contested. It's kind of like, because I've been doing extensive work on this light grid for the last several weeks. You can imagine painting a very pretty picture, getting everything set up right, and then have a negative force come through and just, knock it all down. And you feel like you get to start all over again. The more of us that are doing it at the same time, the less that means. You know what I mean? You can, just me doing it by myself, you can feel disheartened. Or just the 8 or 12 of us that were working together to do it. You see it fall apart, you can get disheartened. There's hundreds and thousands of us doing it at one time. It doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah, actually, these last couple of days, ever since you went public, it's been a wild ride. Many things have been happening, especially these last few days. It's like, yeah, like you said, we're making an advance, and then all of a sudden, bam, like a counterattack of
Yes,
sorts.
and we just can't lose the focus on our goals. We can't let it affect us. We have to keep moving forward. We have to hold the light and continue to move forward through this time. And they'll try and do things to make us give up or make us back away. But it is not the time for that. This is the time to step bravely forward into the future.
Okay. Okay, so well, for this, we need also to work on ourselves to keep us, well, focus on the light and, yeah, keep us, our service of the light. So maybe we could share some tips for our listeners to help us in this time of transition.
Yes, I definitely recommend heart chakra meditations. The four that I spoke of before, of the green bulb meditation, the lotus meditation, the inner heart meditation with your oversoul, your soul family, and the light language in the inner heart meditation, and of course the fourth one of the tiny space, which is the seed of source that empowers us all. And in feeding the inner heart, we grow the seed of source, and it allows the breadth of energy that flows through us to increase. Those four are very important. There's a fifth one that I'm aware of, I haven't spoken of yet. And I think that it can aid people in all four of those meditations. One thing we don't think a lot about when it comes to our heart chakra is our lungs. Our lungs are actually a part of the heart chakra meditation. The breathing is extremely important. Etherically, your lungs represent your wings. Allowing your lungs in an angelic realm to expand out of your back, if you will, and spread out and absorb source energy is a great boon to all four of those meditations, and is something that you should definitely try and do if you can.
Okay, to imagine your wings opening, to fill up your
Right.
lungs.
Right, connected to the physical body of your lungs, the representation of your wings.
Okay, so maybe these representations of winged beings are people who have gained some kind of deep knowledge of their hearts.
It is true, and they are directly related, and the amount of energy that you receive from Source when you start to go through a wing meditation increases the amount of energy you receive substantially. They're like giant radar dishes for Source, if you will, and can be used to clear the etheric and plasmic realm around you by spreading them and flapping them and things like that. There's many uses for them, but meditation, pointing them towards the sky, is a great way to receive source energy in a stronger fashion than you're used to.
Cool. Well, we're gonna try to write all those down. So, or if you have some links to these meditations, I'll surely post them on the blog.
Well, these aren't really links to meditations. I know everyone wants very detailed guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of the type of person that thinks that everyone should kind of be more creative and find a path that fits them specifically. I'm not one to go, hey, look, this is the meditation right here. You should use this one and this one only. I think that we are very powerful, multi-dimensional beings, even though we don't realize it, that we have the ability to create at a level that is beyond what our masters have control over by far, is one of our greatest abilities, and it scares them. Mm. And the reason being is that if we were all to focus on one meditation, then it would be easier to circumvent it. Mm. But if we all create our own multi-dimensional meditations that are beyond their control and serving the light, there will be no way to stop it.
Mm. Okay, so that's an important ingredient, maybe, like your own guidance and your own visualization, your own connection with the meditation, right?
Assuming your own sovereignty and using that inside of your meditation to direct your actions, yes. It's extremely important.
Okay. So we're near the hour, and I always like to finish in a positive note. So I was also planning, now that we're a little bit ahead of schedule, to talk about the positive aspects of this. It's almost, well, for me, it feels almost like an infiltration of the light forces inside the Dark Fleet. So there was, I think, some infiltration of, yes, it's almost like the Ascended Masters have been getting knowledge from inside the Dark Fleet. So it's almost like there was a breach in their quarantine that they thought they had. I don't know if I'm understanding it correctly.
Very much so, yes. There was definitely a large breach. At the third nodal point, the multidimensional self that I was, several of them chose to serve only the light, and several of them chose to stay behind and serve the dark as double agents, and a couple decided to only serve the dark. And they all interacted with each other throughout the whole time, though. So at that point, it was broken wide open, and there was no going back. Specific technologies have been shared with the light in different ways, in positive and negative dimensions. There was no going back from that. In fact, it was like setting points along the dimensional spectrum that would then later be used to bind all the dimensions together in a way so that they could not be used to escape to or to change the central dimension.
Perfect.
And so it really did expose almost everything they were doing, it was a big eye opener. Not that everything changed instantly, because that's not how they work. The light beings and the ascended masters, it's not how they work. But the light knew. The light shone upon it all.
And there's big implications for this, right?
Yes. It meant that almost everything they were doing could not be hidden. It meant that there was no way to ferret away the spoils of war in the end, that they might think they were, or that there was a way to. And they would be allowed to think that for a long period of time, but it wouldn't matter. In the end, it wouldn't matter. It would all come back to where it belonged.
Yes, and I think when we hear confirmation of this breach on their quarantine, then it gives us a lot of, how to say, well, our positive military and all the good guys, well, now they have some assurance that the light has got their back. Like, they're not alone. They're with the light knows everything that the dark ones have done, and now they have all their support.
Yes, it is assured. It is assured it will all be returned to the correct places. and everyone will be healed. It's also is something I'd like to say is that the light forces are a lot closer than we think. They're not very far away from us at all right now. We can't all see them, we can't all sense them yet, but when I'm working on the light grid right now, they're right above me. They're not farther off in the atmosphere. They're right there. It's very helpful. It's very encouraging.
Yeah, and I think it's very exciting because Cobra, many years ago, maybe like 5 years or so, he said that not much before the event, the good guys on the surface would have confirmation that there were higher forces working towards the liberation of the planet. And I think we're getting this confirmation. Like just this couple of days, we've been talking about all this. I mean, do you think this is some sort of confirmation of the light forces working for their liberation?
I've seen a major uptick in SSP groups of new people awakening, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, for me, it's both very exciting and a little scary. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I've never seen anything like it happen before. There's a mass awakening occurring as we speak, and I would definitely think you're going to start seeing a lot more people ready to disclose their truth about what they've been through in these SSPs.
Now, this also poses a little problem because, yeah, I'm getting that we're going to have an avalanche very soon. Like you said, hundreds of people from all over the world. And I think we honestly don't have the infrastructure to communicate this on a massive scale, because every time one comes up, people are like, oh, you send him to David Wilcock, you send him to Corey Goody, you send this guy to, like we have to make sure that we work together to get this information out there and not to rely too much on one or two people,
I agree. It should be a lot. We should, when they start coming out and they want to offer an interview, we should just be giving them a stage to say what they need to say. I mean, and maybe get a pre-interview understanding of what's going to happen. But at some point, it's going to be happening so quick that that we're not even good exponentially. We're not even going to have time to verify it all, to make, you know what I mean, that so-and-so endorsed it, or this person is completely in agreement with this person. And I think what's going to end up happening is after we have more and more of these people come out, we're going to start, and they've all started to tell their stories, and we can tell that they're not lying, or they're not just making things up. We're going to start having these roundtables, more and more roundtables, where each person is verifying each other person's story. And you'll have wild revelations at that point where certain SSP people didn't realize that they had worked in similar fields with other SSPs and maybe had even worked together. Because that's the type of information they didn't want us to know more than anything, was who worked with who, when and where, and on what projects. And only through the sharing of our stories in groups are we able to get that back, because our souls only carry the memories of our experiences. And sometimes when our souls are intertwined in experiences, it's hard to unravel the truth until the souls come back together.
Okay, so let's gather them all up. I mean, I'm open to all of these interviews that we've had. I really want to interview more people of the SSP, because, like you said, it will help us get the complete picture, the whole picture.
Right. You know what I would have one day?
Yeah, what?
Like I would, if I were you, someone who did interviews with the experiencers like you do, is have a show and have an open call day where anyone can send you their link with a small description and like a PM, and you just select them synchronistically and do a 5 to 10 minute interview and then take on the next one.
Okay. Okay, it sounds very good. And maybe in Skype I can make a triple call and double, to make a little round table where we invite all these SSP assets that are remembering their memories. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, you probably want to go at it away with just an open call where you take small individual interviews, and then you get the ones together that have similar experiences, and then offer them like a 3 or 4 roundtable interview to experience each other.
Okay. Now, let's see. I found many questions from our interviews, and I know you love them. So
I do. And I'm willing to go as long as it takes to answer them all. So.
Oh, cool. Well, okay, here, there. Now, okay, in chronological order, let's see. It says, what does the Dark Fleet do now, and what does it look like now?
Well, the Dark Fleet in the solar system, all they do now is hide and try to survive. Mm-hmm. As far as outside the solar system, I can't tell you. I can't travel outside the solar system right now. I'd have to assume that things probably aren't going very well for them. I talked to my angelic and ascended masters, and I get information from them, and I have to say that things are going well and as planned. So I'd say that it's not going good for them anywhere.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, next question says, do you have any information on how does anti-gravity work?
Yes, it's an electromagnetic field that's generated with a large amount of energy. Now, anti-gravity is just a ship resisting the gravity of a planet. We have a magnetic gravity plating that's used inside of ships that create the same gravity that you normally experience. And that is just an electromagnetic field also. A certain frequency. And the carrier frequency is the catalyst that makes it work without using too much electricity.
And then the follow-up question is if that technique was obtained by Nikola Tesla or the Nazis?
Both.
Now, I've heard this, the first prototypes, maybe what's the name of this saucer ship? Well, I don't know, but it was in the early 30s, and I think it worked by spinning mercury at a very high speeds and heating the
Yeah, that was one of the first ones. I think that was a Nazi ship. I only know that from my personal research in Explosion World. I don't have personal experience of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I assume yours, your ship had very much more advanced technology by then.
Right, and it changed so quickly, I didn't even try to keep up with it. If there was something I needed to know, they'd tell me in a briefing.
Okay. Now, here's another interesting question. It says, what role would the religion play in the future?
What role will the religion play in the future? I think what we're really getting down to is a better understanding of our own fields of energy. What you have to realize is that every religion is yearning for the same thing, a higher connection to source energy. And increasing this higher connection to source energy is what increases our own frequency. And that the increasing of our frequency is what allows us to ascend to a higher plane. So I think that's where all religions are going. And if you follow what raises your frequency, you'll be going in the right direction.
Nice. Okay. Now, well, the next question was, what did you eat? But you already answered that. It was some brown goo and vitamins.
Yeah, kind of tan and clear, but yeah. A little bit lighter colored than applesauce, but it didn't taste like anything. If anything, it tasted like Flintstone vitamins with no flavor.
Okay, so not a great gastronomical experience up there.
Did the same thing. I mean, like, you hardly ever had to go number 2 because these vitamins that kept you from having to eat for 3 to 5 days. And when you did eat, it was that gelatinous stuff that most of us absorbed. You almost never had to go number 2.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, almost all of it was absorbed, so it was very efficient.
Yeah.
Now, there's actually a lot of questions about the geopolitical situation in South America, but they're all very specific.
Well, ask me, and I'll do my very best. I want to help as much as possible. If I don't know or I don't feel like I have enough information, I'll say so.
Okay, yes, and also, I mean, yeah, if you could do the astral travel thing and gather more info and like to have the big picture, and then we go.
Oh, I'm gonna take a break on Venezuela for
okay.
at least 2 weeks, man. That was a lot of hard work, and it's very challenging, and it's not easy to get out, and it takes an hour and a half to realign every day, and I'm running on less energy than I normally do right now from all that work. I'm gonna take a little break, guys. I'm sorry. But...
Okay. No problem. Then we'll save them for later because anyway, we can keep the questions and then by, well, another time
No, I want to answer them. Let me try and answer them. I've done the work enough that I could probably answer them. Okay. I'm just going to take a break from this point forward for a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. Then let me find them again. In the meantime, someone in the live transmission, thank you very much, is asking, what are the differences between the astral body and the light body?
Okay. There is a progression of different body systems that occur on the different planes. You're passing through a plasma plane to enter a astral body. The astral body is a magnetic electrical manifestation of your physical body that you perceive. In that body, you can travel the physical realms on a higher plane that has mildly different rules. Because it is an electromagnetic body, it's much more likely to be affected by electromagnetics, i.e. power lines, i.e. storms, things like that. And there are ways that they can try and capture or diminish or cancel a astral body. Of course, all astral bodies are connected to the original body with something like a golden cord or some type of connective substance. So you always return to your physical body. I think that's something important to remember. Now, the light body is different because the light body, instead of using an electromagnetic force to create the structure that you travel in, is using a photon source, a source of light itself that is emanated from inside your body. And at its highest levels, the full body can turn into light and turn back into a body. Keep in mind, that is above 4D. That's like 5D, 6D stuff.
Wow. Okay, perfect. Nice description. I love that. Now, I found the questions about Latin America, so here they go.
Okay.
It says, how do you perceive the manipulation on the South American continent? That is to say, the media or the how did the International Monetary Fund, for example, in Argentina, Macri, it's the name of the president, he won after a almost terrorist campaign in the media, and now he's handing the resources to the dark ones. And well, he goes on to talk about the bad stuff that's happening in Argentina. So do you have any insight on that?
Yes. Can you repeat the name of the president again? I always mispronounce it.
Macri.
Macri?
Macri.
Macri.
Macri. Yep, Macri.
Macri.
Yes.
Well, Macri is definitely not all the way of the light. And I have to say that the crushing of certain media groups was an attempt to get America out of the fray in that country. You're getting rickrolled by the CIA pretty bad in that a lot of the SWAT teams are infiltrated and being used to cause a lot of this turmoil. Think about it like this. Would McAdee want his SWAT teams to go around busting windows for no reason in the suburbs and in cities? Would that be something that would aid him in any way? How would that aid him? It wouldn't. It doesn't even make sense. Why would they just go busting windows for no reason? It's obviously someone trying to trash him. At the same time, he wants to accept BRICS and other currencies. We know the Khazarian Mafia and the rest of them do not want that to happen. They want fiat currency to remain as the major controlling factor in your country. Is he a positive person? I don't think so. So that's the best answer I can give you. Yeah, he's a bad person too. Neither one of them care about human beings. They care about either who controls the power. And one of them is going to be a multi-country BRICS type of thing where your oil and resources can be traded on a market with many different groups, and the other one is going to be just with America. Who he's allying himself with are just as dark as America. We've got two dark factions fighting over your country. And a third faction that is the light, but is only getting traction on one side.
Okay, nice. Okay, that was a very complete answer. We appreciate it. Actually, talking about Argentina, another one of our readers / listeners asks, please, about the Ara San Juan submarine, which was the submarine that was lost in Argentina. Maybe you've got something on it?
Yeah, that was dumb base related. That's all I know.
Oh, okay. Cool. Okay, next question is rather funny. It says, will we win the abilities that you have after the event?
Everyone will have their own abilities. Just as I was recommending you create your own meditations, you will also create your own abilities. It's all about taking your personal power back on the stuff. You can have any ability you want to have.
Cool.
And that's all up to you.
Awesome.
It's part of the ascension process.
Wow, that feels very, very liberating. Great. Okay, next question says, did you receive attacks from other ships?
We were rarely attacked because we remained cloaked most of the time. Every once in a while, when we would set up ambushes from other ships we had used, derelict ships, we used things like that. Their sensors would catch us, and we'd be in the middle of a firefight, and usually they'd just all jump. They just consider the mission over, and they would take off. They wouldn't even risk a straight-out battle.
So, yeah, they are great strategists in that they would avoid conflict whenever possible, no?
Yes. If they felt that in any way it wasn't to their advantage, if they didn't have certain criteria advantage, they would all leave. They would all jump. And in different directions.
Okay, so they are masters of war, it seems.
Yeah, ambush. Yeah.
Now,
Base guerrilla warfare, if you will.
Yeah. Now it says, is it true that you sell human slaves in exchange for technology?
Well, not me personally, but they did. They exchanged human captives back to the same organizations they were stolen from for technology. They sold them on black markets. They replicated DNA and sold hundreds of thousands of clones of certain types of slaves. Just any way they could generate revenue in technology, they did it. And it was very vampiric. It was very destructive.
Okay. Now, well, we talked about Sintamani, and so that one's answer. Now, this one's a very tough one. It says, how many extraterrestrial races have you had contact with?
Whoa, that's something I've never tried to count.
It's in the hundreds or in the thousands?
It's weird because most of my contact with alien races that was not in a captor, slave type of position are after I got back. And they've never been in person since then. So I can describe what they look like on higher planes when I can see into the higher planes and they're there. But that's about it. And I don't always ask for names. If they came with the ones that I am related to, I don't always ask for names. You know what I mean? I consider them just an ally.
Cool. Now, next question says, what can you say about the ancient builder race?
There's a bunch of them. Everyone likes to go, oh, ancient builder race, like there's only one. I mean, there's so many ancient builder races. And I mean, I can describe multiple different types, but I just don't know if it's appropriate to do that yet. You know what I mean? There were multiple ancient builder races. Aquatic, avian, insectoid, reptilian, and amphibian. There were all sorts of builder races, and just about every type of classified living organism on the planet has a race that was a builder race here.
Okay. Great, that was actually the last question, so we had time to answer all of them. I mean, they asked other questions, but you already answered them in the last two interviews, so I really recommend you guys listen to the podcasts if you haven't.
All right. Cool. Thank you, sir.
So let's do some closing now. Is there anything you'd like to talk to us, something to tell us before leaving?
Yes. There's a lot that we need to focus on with Cobra right now. He's done so much good work for us, and he's going through he needs help with the energy towards Ashana, I believe her name. The recent post by Cobra.
I see Astara. Huh?
Yeah, Ashtara. Yes. I really want us all to try and help and focus on that for Cobra. I think it's important that that we help both Cobra and Ashtara. I heard that she had passed. Try and help her find her way. if you feel so directed.
Cool. Okay. Yes, I'll post that on the transcript for sure. Yes, I think that's important too, and I think it's rather shocking that it happened right in these tumultuous times.
Yes, and I have to say that it's definitely not necessarily a bad thing. That it can be extremely uh, uh, useful. It can be extremely helpful. It can create an entirely new paradigm, and that when someone goes to the light, when they return, they're infinitely more powerful. They have much more control over helping from up there than from down here sometimes. So it can definitely be a very good thing too.
Okay. Yes, it's like she's meeting with her guides now,
Right,
so we're gonna get maybe yes, maybe more direct help. Who knows?
right. And I'm sure Cobra will have communications about it also at some point.
Okay, so yeah, that was a very interesting interview, very full of information that it will be very, very well controversial for some maybe. And we thank you very much for all this work that you've done, and of course for astral projecting to Venezuela to making us that favor. That was a huge favor. I think our fans will love it. So thank you very much again for visiting us in this interview.
Oh, and I want to say one last thing in closing. Please don't take it too hard on me, but I do get mild scattering attacks from time to time. You'll notice I won't be able to find a normal vocabulary word or the name of someone or something. Please be forgiving on that. I do my best.
Okay, noted. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, so then see you this Wednesday.
All right, sounds good.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye. Woof. We're done now. Eso fue la entrevista con Meta. Voy a tener la traducción muy pronto y la transcripción en inglés también, y se las compartiremos lo más pronto posible. Ya casi está la transcripción de la segunda entrevista al español, así que estén pendientes, no se la pierdan y nos vemos el miércoles. Hasta luego.